is going to surprise us here at the end. So be interested to see how they do.
Okay, so we've got some Sultai Ramp here, our first sighting of Uro on coverage versus the Red Black Midrange. So I
Gosh.
am I'm actually excited to see the Red Black deck play against the Uro deck a little bit because it looked impressive against the Teamer Adventures deck. So I'm genuinely interested to see if it looks competitive against, the Boogeyman.
Agreed. No, I am totally in for this as well. And I'll let you know a little secret. I love Eurodex, so I'm all for it.
So you see Croxa coming down here. We're gonna have a good curve from DMA here again. We saw earlier in their earlier feature match, Calls the Dead on curve with Croxa being a really good enabler to get that powerful Titan into play as early as turn 4.
Yeah, that is such a good curve. I mean, and you can even make it better by having I guess you can't really cast Mire Triton if you want to put Crocs up, but you could just get that free value where you flip Crocs off Timuret and you never even had it, and it just therefore almost draws you a card. So Timuret Calls the Dead is a card that I thought was just so close to being busted, but this is for sure the right kind of deck for it.
The tough kind of feels there, not something you can really control, but Calls the Dead milling double red source in a row there for DMA while you've got like triple Phoenix in hand and Croxa in graveyard, just like
Yeah, it's quite awkward to have 3 drops in your hand and not be able to cast any of them right now.
Yep. Red black, notably being one of those 4 2-color combinations that's missing a pathway land currently. So I think if there's some struggle in the consistency in what DMA's deck is doing, it's something that'll definitely be worth revisiting when the next set drops, even if it ends up not quite being competitive this time through.
Yeah, how do you feel about that? Just like random pathways missing. Do you like that, or do you just want them all?
I just want all of them. If I'm being honest, I am at least glad that we're guaranteed getting the next 4 of them. Like looking at Pioneer, for example, where we've got like half the fast lands and half the shadow lands and half of 3 or 4 different cycles. It's like, just give me all 10.
Exactly. Let people, build the decks that they want, but now mana constricts some ideas, and that's my problem. It's like, oh yeah, this deck, I want to combine these 2 cards. This looks really cool. And they're like, oh, for some reason, for really no reason at all, my mana just sucks with this deck.
Yep.
And that's what feels bad.
Agonizing Remorse here, really showing some of its power, getting exile here. It's funny, when they printed Thoughtseize into Historic and Amonkhet Remastered, it was actually a power level increase for Uro because the premier discard spell was then no longer Agonizing Remorse. So the fact that Uro has to deal with Remorse in this format makes it marginally worse, at least.
Agreed. Yeah, and anything to make that card marginally worse, I'm all for.
That kind of...
Oh, that swamp was brutal.
the swamp, and then like the Spike Field Hazard on top of the deck where you're like, well... I guess I have to keep this, but like I'm not happy about the tapped red source.
Yeah, and now all you're doing is just praying that the Sultai player didn't get land 5 there, because land 5 into Ashiok and knowing that you're going to do nothing about it next turn is real bad. And even now, this is on time enough where Ashiok is going to be good.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you were a DMA, you really needed the Ashiok player to miss for at least 1 more turn here, and I think we're going to have an uphill battle at this point.
Exactly. And I'm going to check the list, but I'm guessing Sultai, we play a ton of lands here.
That's a good question.
Do we know, is this Jamal or is this...
this is Voltaic.
The other one. Oh, Voltaic. Oh, yeah, duh. Okay. Yeah, let's see how many lands they're playing here. So 20 actual lands. Then we got a decent amount of split cards. 6, 7, 8, 9 split cards. So 29. That's about what I expect. That 50% ratio is something that I think we're going to see in basically every Uro deck from now on. If some of those spells are also, or if some of those lands are also spells here. So I love that choice there. And this list just looks good. It just looks clean, powerful. You're playing the best disruption.
I really like the acknowledgement from Voltaic's list in that they're playing Vivian Monsters Advocate, even though they don't have a high creature count, because she's basically the closest thing you have to Nissa Worldbreaker in this format, right? Like, you obviously don't have the
Yeah.
mana doubling from it, but you do at least have the constant stream of threats that she can provide.
Sure. I'm wondering if you would rather to even sprace out your curve a little bit more, if that's the kind of card you want, just play Garrick, right? Garrick, the 6-mana Garrick, seems like it also does that, except the removal aspect on a Planeswalker seems better to me in a deck that doesn't abuse the creatures, you
Yeah,
know? What do you think of that?
it's tough. So like the Garrick is a downtick make a creature, whereas Vivian uptick. So Vivian's kind of provides that constant flow of threats, whereas Garrick has to like take time off in between with pumping.
Garrick's actually a 0 to make tokens.
Oh, you're talking about 6-mana Garrick.
Yes,
Oh,
6-mana
okay.
Garrick.
So
Yeah,
we watched Baby Garrick earlier, and that's where my head was. Yeah, that's an interesting
gotcha,
one.
yeah. The good Garrick, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right that this card's probably worth revisiting. The fact that it is removal is that's interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not like I can claim that as my own idea or anything, because Jamal is actually doing the same planeswalkers, the same amount of planeswalkers, 3 Ashiok, 1 Ugin, and then 2 Garrick in the spot of that.
Okay,
Otherwise, I
interesting.
think their list is like basically identical.
Very similar
Maybe
core.
they
Cool.
tested together, except one of them was just like, hey, I'd rather have Garrick. One of them was like, hey, I'd rather go Uro into Planeswalker more consistently. And I think both cases are defensible for sure.
So Extinction Event here being that really clean one-sided sweeper that also exiles these recursive threats.
Yeah.
I wish I had access to how many cards are in DMA's graveyard. We'll probably see here. It doesn't look like the Crocs is currently escapable.
Yeah, that's the constant struggle of doing coverage over arena events. Graveyards are not fanned out ever, so it's just like you have to really pay attention when they accidentally hover over their graveyard or something.
Yep. We see here Spikefield Hazard plus Bone Crusher Giant teaming up to kill this, and this is a good play with the information that DMA has, but you're going to feel really bad when this Uro happens in a second. You don't have Spike Field anymore. Well,
no.
There was a second Uro from Baltic anyways, so I guess it's kind of a wash.
Yeah, oh yeah, that does exile, doesn't it?
Yeah, Spike Field, very similar to Scorching Dragonfire in that you can tag their Uro in response to its sacrifice trigger, and then it dies.
I thought you were being sarcastic. I was like, that 1 damage is not going to be that good. But yeah, you're right. It does do the exile thing. Really nice versatility from that card, though.
Yep. Yeah, and the really interesting thing to me is, like, effects we've seen similar to this, like Scorching Dragonfire and Magma Spray in the past, they don't hit the player too. So, like, this is any target, so it can just be a random, okay, one poke you in the face for the last point of damage as well.
And none of them were lands. That's, I think, the biggest
Correct,
thing,
yes. Yeah, this one is a split card, which is very powerful.
Yep. And now we're going to see Uro here, but hey, we have the Murderous Rider to answer it cleanly for a turn. And I don't know what we're at for Graveyard for DMA. I didn't see Croxa highlighted, but we got to be getting pretty close.
Yeah, and I imagine, so a pretty big thing here is the Ugin's looming, but there's still 2 lands off of that, and this Phoenix gets to pump itself extra attack up. So even though Voltaic is at 20, we could see, 10-point swings here every turn.
Yeah, and that's the nice thing about this Rakdos deck compared to Sultai, where you use up your mana every single turn. Rakdos usually doesn't have those mana sinks, but Phoenix of Ash is a nice inclusion to help you just go for the gusto here.
Looks like Uro is escapable again to get back to 13, but the Mauling is hanging out here, and again, just reasonable amount of pressure means we might be able to see this red black deck punch through Uro coming back again and again and again. Looks like this is the last of the graveyard here for our Uro player, all going away.
Looks like we're getting, one more Uro here. Great play, but we do have the removal spell. So it's gonna be answered. But yeah, just look at how powerful Uro is here. Like 2 premium removal spells got aimed at it. It gained 9 life. You drew 3 cards off of it. Like that is just an exchange in the grand scheme of thing. When you look at what it did all game, that you're just like, this is unbelievable.
Yep. I like the eliminate targeting the Phoenix of the Ash here. Obviously, the Phoenix can come back, but like the Croxa can come back as well. So by making DMA choose between which of the 2 they're escaping, we're limiting their resources in that manner.
Agreed. And normally, without Ugin being able to be on the battlefield there, you would think, okay, I have one more turn to set up, so I'd rather play Murderous Rider, and I would agree. But one thing of note, everything is odd then. So Extinction Event is just a Wrath there. So I like just pumping there instead of diversifying threats because it's not that diverse.
Yep.
Yeah, now we're in a rough spot here. Now it looks like Sultai's doing the Sultai things. Just getting to this point of the game where every card they play redraws or does a devastating effect like Ugin, it's really hard to answer the decks at this point.
Yep. And this is, Ugin is kind of the biggest you can go in this format. There really isn't going over the top of that card consistently because it comes down, it wipes out your board, and then it hangs out and is also win condition. There's the 8th untapped land, and I would, especially like Kroxa cost 4 mana to escape, but remember the converted mana cost on it is only 2 here. So Ugin's going to get to come down -2. The graveyard is empty for DMA, so we're not going to be able to escape a Phoenix and pressure it.
Yeah, and these are the kind of cards that Rakdos decks have just notoriously struggled with. Like now in this version, with the flip card that destroys a creature or planeswalker, and Murderous Rider is probably the best it's ever been at answering Ugin, and it's still devastating here.
Yeah, and notably, I think similar to the Teamer match we saw this red-black deck play earlier, as this game goes on, the red-black deck is less and less likely to win. But different from the Adventures deck, the Sultai deck here has Uro to stay alive, right? Like, notably, Uro gained 12 life this game, and Voltix at 9.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's just the card that allows you to play these really expensive... That's just mathematics right there.
Yep. And then, now, we're solidly in garbage time at this point with Vivian cleverly making reach tokens here. We just don't have a chance.
Yeah.
Like, Rankle would normally be a great draw, but Voltic with the heads-up play of making a reach token to make sure that things like Rankle just don't matter.
And yeah, just sending 5 worth of attackers at an Ugin when you're chump attacking, when an Ugin's not at 5, is probably the most discouraging thing ever. It's like, I'm not winning this battle.
Yep.
All right.
See a little bit of explosion there before we head to sideboarding. So I'm expecting the Sultai deck to become more interactive to try and extend the game. I'm expecting the black-red deck to do the inverse of that and try and be as aggressive as possible.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how we attack this here. And one thing that I love about the Sultai deck is I have been trying to make Shark Typhoon work in these Lotus Cobra style decks, and I've just been learning that it doesn't really have a home in those decks. Like even when I was trying to be an ECD neutralized kind of control style deck, they haven't slotted in very well. But with this much disruption and this much counter spells, this is a Shark Typhoon deck. And I really, really think that's going to be good because what that allows you to do is hold up counter spells for, these really over the top spells like Genesis Ultimatum or something like that, and then just cycle when you have nothing to do. And I think that versatility is really strong, and we've seen it be dominant in Standard in 2 different decks, Temur Reclamation and then Sultai after Wilderness Reclamation got banned. So,
I mean, if you're watching even older formats, like Shark Typhoon's been showing up in Modern and Legacy and Pioneer, it's just like, it turns out when you strap a flash game-winning body that can't be countered onto a cantrip, it just, it goes in a lot of places, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, honestly, that card has almost solely ended the career of mono blue decks. Like those are the decks that got hit the most because that whole just play sticky small threats, back it up with counter spells. If Shark Typhoon's in the metagame, you cannot do that.
Yep. You have to, or at the very least, you have to have some way to interact with it, right? Like you need more than just Brazen Bar, or you need some kind of cheap spot removal or other bounce spells at the minimum.
Exactly, but then at that point, you're still naturally 2-for-1ing yourself. And if you don't have it, you are inclined to not attack, then you give away information about your hand. It puts you in just a really bad spot, or you just get blown out and you just attack all the time, and that's also bad. So
yep. See, our red-black player maybe not quite certain of exactly what they want to trim for their last couple of cuts there. Again, we see them did bring in those rob or the rich, so they are assuming that more aggressive role like we expect them, because again, I think the red-black player needs to get this game over with before turn, let's say 9 or 10.
And here's something I really want to point out and stress about Eurodex is look at the situation that DMA was put into at not knowing how much removal to leave in and stuff. It's like, this is a control deck. So normally you leave no removal in, but Euro is so powerful that you have to have answers for it. So every deck is sideboarding to beat 2 decks in one, and that's what makes the card so dominant.
Yeah, exactly. And there's going to be games where like, okay, I left in removal to kill Uro, but then they didn't draw Uro.
Yeah, and then they planeswalker you, and
correct.
Yeah.
Yep. One card I do think that goes a little bit of a way towards helping fix some of those issues is Hagra Mauling does a really excellent job of like being a way to kill Uro that's also just again not dead when Uro doesn't show up at least.
Yes. Yeah, no, I have high hopes for that card. It's great. The flip side is a tap land, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. I guess they all are that aren't mythic.
Correct. Yep.
So I should have known that. But yeah, I think that card is excellent. I think that card is really good. And these Sultai decks really wanted an unconditional removal spell because you can't just play 4 Eliminates, 4 Heartless Acts, and then you just lose to some random things with counters and 4 drops all day,
Yep. We see some of the real downside to DMA not having untapped lands here. They're having to play Savvy Triomes instead of having red-black duels, which is really impacting their curve. Like, imagine if the Savvy Triome had been an untapped land, we would have been able to tag that Uro with a Spike Field Hazard, and then it would be gone.
Yeah, no kidding. And like, that's another point for Uro. I mean, I guess we don't have to stress how good Uro is. Everyone knows, but even that exchange just feels so bad. You're still naturally 2-for-1ing yourself for the future of you able to cast this spell later. Like that is discouraging.
The other thing that's good to know too, talking about these dual lands, is that there's not a blue-green dual land, right? So like, however good Uro is right now, it's likely only going to get better in this standard format next set when it guaranteed has more consistent mana.
Yeah, no kidding. I almost hope they leave off the Simic pathway. They're like, come on, you've done enough to wreak havoc in standard Simic. Let's try to cut out the legs from you a little bit.
So we've got the Fairy Dragon coming into play here, but I think there's a Mauling coming. Yep. Get mauled. And then we've got that Shark Typhoon looming that's going to get to make a 4/4 that'll just be bigger than anything DMA has in play for the most part at this point. Oh, I guess we could see double stomp, I suppose.
Yeah, that's reasonable as well. But I just love that play. It's like, I don't have quite enough mana to bring back Uro, but hey, I'll just cycle the shark. Fuels my Uro. It's a great creature. I 2-for-1 people. Like, oh, hello.
That is a hard cast Shark Typhoon there.
Holy. Okay, so Voltaic clearly misclicked.
The old hidden mode. That feels a little cheeky to me. Like,
yeah, that doesn't feel great to me. I'm not gonna lie, but I love it. As a spectator, you always want people to cast it. Always.
It's adorable. Like, I feel like if I had a Planeswalker rolled up, I wouldn't mind the hard cast Shark Typhoon, but like, you probably want to Extinction Event evens anyways, which means you don't keep your shark. I guess you could do odds. Nope. Yep, we're doing evens, and I think that's correct. But I think we might get punished for being cheeky here.
That is the shortest lived shark in the history of time.
Whereas this card's actually really funny when you pair it with Shadow the Sky, because it makes your Shadow the Sky draw you a card.
Yes, that is nice. All right, well, I'm guessing we're at Uro time, which is just going to cleanly stabilize you here. Yep. Man, Blood Chief's Thirst is good in this deck too. I am loving this Sultai list.
Now, one thing to note is that even if we find the land tier to kick Blood Chief's Thirst, is even with the kicker, your converted mana cost is still only 1, so you'll only get a 1/1 shark with it, but probably still fine.
Yeah, that's a good point. Kicker does not increase the actual cost of the card, similar to Uro. You can never disdainful stroke Uro, even though it's being paid for.
So yeah, try to decide here on DMA's side, do we want to get the Kroxa going, or do we want to get the Calls the Dead? And like Kroxa will trade with this Uro, but
Yep.
not before it draws another card and gains 3 more life here, unfortunately.
Yeah, yep. But the thing is we have the graveyard advantage if you're a DMA fan.
That's true.
So I think that's a exchange that you're willing to make. Plus, it kind of keeps that 3 life in check with playing Kroxa. So I like it. I thought that was a much better play than the Timurit Calls the Dead.
Yep. On Voltaic side, that's kind of what you're looking for. I guess you would prefer Planeswalkers to trigger Shark Typhoon, but another 6/6 is nothing you're gonna be too sad about here.
No kidding. 1/6/6 goes away, but guess what? Sultai's got plenty more.
I mean, is this Gargoth card even playable? You have to choose whether or not you draw a card or gain the life. It doesn't just do both.
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't gain any life too. It seems really bad. Yeah, and you got to pay 5 instead of 4. I mean, come on.
Yep. All right, there's other Calls to Dead. So like, this red-black deck is about to get set up with pretty endless Kroxas. So we're gonna have to mill 12 cards over here. We're gonna get to make a pile of zombies. The zombies with the Bone Crusher Giants do trade with the Gargoth, which is nice. There's an Ox. Yep. Okay.
All right, that's big. That's big. This deck is sweet.
Can we grind through what Sultai's been able to put together here? Ox is a great step towards maybe doing that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Sultai grinds probably the best that we've seen in the history of Standard in the last, like year or so. I think it even outgrinds these Omnath decks. So it is a tall order to be able to outgrind them, but
okay, and we see another brick here
wow.
from Voltaic side of the board. I believe there's only 2 or 3 cards in their graveyard, so their Uro's not ready to escape again yet. So we're going to see... Gosh, are we going to see Ox and Kroxa next turn? There's 9 cards in DMA's graveyard. They're about to flip 6 more over. So yeah, I believe they can do both.
So I want to point out a little misstep here from DMA. There is no point in ever blocking with that 3rd zombie there, because if they have a removal, they're still going to get you, right? They still kill Bone Crusher, and then you're just giving away 1 extra zombie. So that's the point. I mean, I guess you stop trample damage.
Yeah, they were technically baiting trample, right? Like they were
okay,
it's a
I suppose.
I think you're right that you're probably not supposed to, because the 1 point of health doesn't really matter when you're at 22.
When you're at 22, yeah.
But there's they offered themselves up to some risk for very minimal reward. Like they opened up a blowout to try and gain 1 life, basically.
Exactly. And I mean, if that Gargoyle sticks around, it probably doesn't matter that you have an extra zombie or not, but it's something to think about there in those type of situations.
All right, here's the Ox coming back. So the Ox is going to discard the hand and draw 3 cards. And then,
this is sick.
Yep. I like just binning the Bone Crusher Giant here, so we can also escape Kroxa this turn. That Bone Crusher will be the 6th card into the graveyard here, which is excellent.
Oh my god! Wow.
Okay.
This is some powerful graveyard synergies here.
Yep. Seeing again, really that Calls the Dead really tying the room together. Uro is almost assuredly the more powerful of the 2 Titans, but just the fact that this red-black deck is able to recast them more consistently on the back of Calls the Dead is huge.
Yeah, this is insane. And all of a sudden, it's like, what can we top deck? I mean, Ugin is insane. That's probably your best draw.
Yep.
The Shark Typhoon, I will still stand by that it should not have been cast.
Yeah, I agree. The Shark Typhoon was probably the mistake that was made on Voltaic's side of the board this game.
Yeah.
They could have had, I believe it was a 4/4 obviously, because they paid 6 mana, and they could have drawn an extra card from it. That would have been an extra card in their graveyard, and like here, they literally can't escape Uro because they're 1 card short. So I think
Are they actually 1 card short?
They were 1 card short. Yeah,
I
think they got caught up in the cheeky play and were properly punished for it. So.
Wow, yeah, that was max punishing. That's what happens when you don't cycle Shark Typhoon, I suppose.
Yep.
Honestly, the only times I cast Shark Typhoon are when I'm just so far ahead that I can click buttons at random and still win, you know?
Yep, you're like, okay, we just need to close the game out. We'll make a couple of dorks and it'll be great.
Exactly. I mean, it is the chat favorite, so whenever I'm wildly ahead, to appease my lovely Twitch chat, I always slam the Shark Typhoon, but... All right. Any huge changes? Doesn't look like it.
Yeah, I think both players are probably going to stick to their plans. I think obviously being on the play is going to be a decent advantage for our Sultai player. They just want as much tempo advantage as possible so they can try and survive the game as it goes along.
Yeah, I was very impressed with the ability to grind there from that Sultai deck, and everything was made possible because of Timurit Calls the Dead, and just an insanely powerful card that isn't an insanely powerful effect that isn't really available in Standard like it is Pioneer when you see like Seder Wayfinder.
Yep.
That's the one that mills for, right? Yeah,
Yep.
that's yeah. Stuff like that where you get that free value and it replaces itself. There's really not any cards like that except Timur Calls the Dead. So nice to see that ability abused.
So we'll see our players on the play here. Looks like a 4-land, 4-spell hand for our Sultai player, and probably a mulligan for our red-black player.
Yeah, none of those red-black cards are flipping around and letting them know that they're lands as well, so that's too bad.
So pretty keepable 6-0 overall.
Yeah, not bad, not bad. You got the best card, Timur Calls the Dead, so we're in.
We see Meyer Triton being prioritized here over the Murder Strider. I kind of like that. Again, I think DMA are properly identifying that they're the beatdown here, and these Meyer Tritons give them more chances to draw things like Croxa and Phoenix and Ox. Perfect. Set me up.
Exactly. Give them the beatdowns. And yeah, you said it earlier. These mana bases are just really tricky for Rakdos. That's the only thing that's holding them back is losing Blood Crypt and not getting a pathway in response is just a kick in the face. I feel like it's like, oh yeah, aggro wasn't good enough before. Well, let's take away your mana base and see if it's any better.
Yeah, it's tough. We could see the shaking on the basic swamp there. Like they have to choose like. They're not guaranteed to go 2 into 3 right now. And we really, if you're DMA, you want to go Croxa Calls the Dead, Escape Croxa. And in order to do that right now, you need to hit running lands.
Yeah. Yep. No, that makes sense. Interesting to play Croxa there first instead of Meyer Triton. You would think that you would want to get an attacker down. And since you're probably going to cast it anyways, but I guess if you draw perfect untap land into untap land, this gives you a chance to go Timur Calls the Dead into Croxa, but seems unlikely, and that's with exiling nothing. So I think I would have liked the other play there.
Something that's kind of an interesting thought that I just had is that the spell land split cards, in a way, are kind of a power level decrease for Croxa, because these decks are cutting lands to play things that are spells on the front side. So, like, your opponent is basically getting to discard lands and not take bolt damage fairly frequently now.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, that is a little brutal, huh?
Yeah.
I feel like these Croxa decks, they beat you by grinding you down, and it almost doesn't matter that speed is not on their side because they just outgrind you. That's the only defense I can have where it's still solid. But yeah, that's a big hit. Just extra 3 points of damage here and there.
So only 3 cards in the bin. This Fabled Passage adds a 4th, so we can go double Meyer Triton here, getting set up to escape the Croxa next turn. That being said, there's an Extinction event looming, so depending on how greedy Voltaic wants to be, I wouldn't be surprised if we see that wait until Croxa hits play.
Yeah, I think what I would do, I'd still play both Meyer Tritons as well and just say, hey, I'm not escaping Croxa until you deal with this. This is a strong enough board that, you're still kind of priced in to answer. But luckily for Voltaic, you do have some spot removal that you can aim for it. But we'll see if they take the bait. Nope, just says I need to deal with it now.
Okay. And on DMA side of the board, there's 3 other Extinction events in Voltaic's deck. So, that first one fired off there does not mean that your Croxa is safe by any means. We see Eliminate and Bloodchief Surf rolled up, ready to answer this Croxa. We've got Uro looming in the graveyard still. Although, I guess we're missing a second green source, huh?
We're missing a second green, and yeah, this Croxa, even though it is just going to be answered with either Eliminate or Bloodchief's Thirst, it's still a nice clean 2-for-1 that, it's got escape, so it wasn't even the hand, so it's almost like a 3-for-1.
Yeah, and we see here we get until hold up neutralized very nicely. I wonder if we'll see Clearwater Pathway hang out as a potential thing to discard later.
I would think Yeah, I mean, it's such a bad land right now. If it was a green source, you slam it, of course. But yeah, I can see holding it here. And now we're in a rough spot here. It's like, oh, yeah, I got Murderous Riders. I got Murderous Riders for days, but
Yeah,
it's not a great attacker.
yeah, you like want to put pressure on the board because you know you're the beatdown, but at the same time they're
Yeah.
at 20 and you're playing a 2/3 for 3 mana, so you're just like not ecstatic about that choice.
Yep, that's brutal. You definitely don't want to neutralize that either. So at least it's a threat that's gonna, start putting a clock up, but not a good one.
We see that we were talking about how Uro can only get a little bit better as they get better mana, and we see Voltaic's mana really coming back to bite them here a little bit. That missing that second green, meaning Vivian's not castable, Uro's not escapable, really being a pretty big deal here.
How would that Vivian be as a Garrick this turn?
That's true. Actually, that's a big deal. Like the Garrick's actually just easier to cast as well. We had a 6th land there.
Mm-hmm.
How many green sources are in this deck? They're 4, 8, 9, 10, 11. Is that right? 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Wow. Yeah, there really aren't. So like what we're seeing happen here on Voltaic's side really isn't that unfortunate in this statistical aspect. There are only 13 green sources in their deck, which means you're going to frequently be missing your second. Again, in large part because of that pathway.
Yeah, and the fact that basically all the double phase cards that you want to play in this style of deck are not green. There's Bala's Recovery or whatever, and then there's Tangled Florahedron, and neither of them slot very well into a control deck.
Yep.
The Recovery card I think is great when you pair it with Cobra and you pair it with ramp style stuff. Just getting back Fabled Passage basically has been like the most insane thing for me. But I'm really low on Tangled Florahedron when I thought that card was going to be insane. I'm really low on it compared to this. And you can see the mana base just doesn't have extra green sources in mind that, maybe they would need if some of these double phase cards were actually green sources as well.
We see all of these things exiling being super relevant here. So DMA losing 3 cards this turn, but none of them are going to the bin to fuel the escape from the Kroxa. And that's so we saw them take a Kroxa out of the bin as opposed to taking Murderous Rider from hand when they have Vivian rolled up as a choice.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, maybe just thinking, hey, I just hope you play it. But, I mean, when you only have one of this effect, they have Ugin, they have Vivian, they have Ashiok. I feel like you have to keep it. But...
This is an interesting head game. So, like, they left you the Murderous Rider, so you're like, all right, well, they just, like, have nothing that they care about having killed? Do I just, like, play a 2/3 out?
Yeah. And then the 2/3 in the face of Vivian making an endless stream of 3/3s is going to get dwarfed real quick if we get that green source. Okay. But yeah, looking at the mana base, I think some change I'd make immediately is just putting Temple of the green-red Temple. Or green-black, excuse me. That seems like you want to max out on that a little bit more. But
some Temple of Milady. Oh!
Yeah.
Oh, we burned. Oh gosh, this is so good. So we burned the removal spell, and now we get to Kroxa the Vivian, and then I think that gives them enough to escape the Kroxa. So then the question, no, not quite yet.
They're one short. I think they're one short because Murderous Rider goes to the gray or the bottom. That's why we're in trouble.
Never mind. Uro's coming into play. We're done.
Oh yeah, game's over.
All right.
And look at all the fuel here. This Uro has been ready to go for quite a while. So this one's going to be tough. We need a way to exile that. And oh god, and Ashiok.
Yeah. And again here, so Ashiok just exiles this Phoenix super cleanly. You get to play Ashiok, down tick, bounce the Phoenix. It gets exiled from hand.
Yeah, that seemed like a top deck that had hopes, but yeah, now Ashiok being excellent here.
And you see, DMA's at 32 life, but your life total just does not matter here. They're just burying you in card advantage. You could be at 100, and they'll kill you eventually before it matters.
Exactly. Yeah, that is the joys of Sultai. Be like, oh, you're at 35? Well, I mean, you're going to concede at 22, so,
Yep. 20. They'll take 6 twice.
Okay, good. Perfect.
Oh, Savvy Triumph. Would you believe that this is the last match still playing today? Or
I
in this
would
round?
believe that. I
Yep.
would believe
Yeah,
that.
actually,
Yeah.
we caught it. We caught it. This will be our first round. We don't get a time shifted feature match in here because we'll be rolling right into round 5 here. It looks like with this one.
I mean, this structure is just so awesome. It once you get towards the end of the event, as a player, putting myself in the perspective of the player, you're not having to wait this hour-long match every single time. Like you're playing. When people get done, you're probably just starting right again. And I just love that as a player to just play more Magic instead of the waiting and the downtime. So kudos to you for this structure.
They're trying. DMA is trying. They are.
Yeah, fighting
There's
the good fight.
there's a lot of 6/6s, and really, I appreciate the closing power of Sultai in a way. It's definitely an obnoxious archetype, but at least it's not like blue-white control where you're like wondering how many turns it's going to take you to die if you don't concede. Like there's a lot of 6/6s. We've got some 4/4s. Even Ashiok closes the game relatively quickly.
Yeah, I'd be really curious how this Sultai deck looks just great to me. It looks absolutely excellent, and I would be curious how it stacks up against the Omnath go over the top decks. Because if it beats that, I mean, then we might have a new boogeyman.
I think we're gonna get a chance to see that today. I would assume. Yep.
Yeah, I think you're right. But I mean, hey, I'm looking at the XOs so far after round 3. Only 2 4-color Omnaths are at the top, so it's not dominating so far.
Okay.
All right.
Righty. Well, like I said, I think we're going to skip our time shifted feature for this round since we had one that lasted the entire time there. Don't go anywhere because that was the last match of the round. So we're going to go ahead and be back momentarily. Thanks for hanging out today, folks. Don't go anywhere.